Hey guys, welcome to What If Naruto Fall in Love with TemarI. If you love the What If, so like, subscribe. So now let's start the What If.
Naruto, the hyperactive knucklehead ninja, was walking towards the lofty village walls of the Hidden Leaf village, an unconscious Sasuke slung atop his shoulders. He was the last one of the retrieval squad sent to retrieve Sedicha to return, and even though he was bleeding profusely while barely hanging on to his consciousness, he was grinning like an idiot. He had accomplished his mission, thereby fulfilling his promise. After all, Uzumaki Naruto never went back on his word, this time being no exception. As the gates to the village became visible to his glittering azure orbs, his injuries were finally cloaking their veils over him to the limits of his bodily endurance, prompting him to ultimately fall down on the ground with a thump, completely unconscious. Meanwhile, TemarI was walking on the path leading to the Leaf Village. Her ever-present battle fan was slung on her back like usual, and the white battle kimono she donned was draped to her curvaceous figure, held onto it firmly with a red belt tied to her waist in a knot. Her hair was trussed into her usual 4 ponytails, most found and unbecoming of a young female such as herself, mainly since the down played heavily on her looks. But to a Kunoichi as serious as she was, it was a necessity. Looks didn't help you in battle, and they sure as hell never came in handy during shinobi affairs. She was taught it the hard way many times in the past. Her 2 eyes caught 2 silhouettes lying there on the ground, unconscious, and she immediately rushed to them. Shikamaru had been taken by the medics ahead of her. In fact, the lazy genius had been adamant to get back to the village ahead of her, as soon as he possibly could, and she could relate to his worries on that subject. Seeing her baby brother, who she had never even suffered so much as a scratch to almost all his younger life, lying half dead on the ground after his battle with Naruto, she had never felt so troubled as she had right then. So, in short, she could relate to the pineapple-haired gentleman, wanting to get close to his fallen squad mates as soon as humanly possible. Crouching down, she flipped over the Ichet to make him face up. Her trained eyes instantly traveled and focused over the spiral-shaped wound scarring his chest. Even though the high-degree burns were clearly evident on his chest, she could discern with a mere glance that his wounds were in no way life-threatening. So, putting that thought to the side, she gently placed him aside and turned all her attention to the second victim lying by his side. She didn't even need to turn him to realize that he was on the verge of death. The blood pooling underneath him in a puddle was proof enough, staining the ground crimson. Instantly rushing to his side, she flipped him over and tore off her kimono near her thighs, right before pressing the bundled cloth over the gaping wound on his chest. She almost missed the shuffling footsteps coming nearer and nearer in her dazed state, but looking up to see the medic team now on site, relief washed over her entire being. Seeing them put Sasuke on a stretcher, she bristled. "Hey, get over here, he needs immediate attention. His wounds are fatal," she shouted, quite frantically. Their eyes looked at her in mild surprise before traveling down to the boy on her lap. Instantly, much to her added anger and confusion, those eyes turned cold. "Sama is injured, can't you see? Plus, he is much more valuable to the Leaf than he will ever be." She glowered over him, but the men didn't budge so much as an inch in their stances. "We have our orders and we must follow them to the point," they answered her curtly. Before she could so much as raise a word of protest, they were off to the village with an unconscious Sasuke now in tow. "Those idiots," she hissed. Looking down, her anger was replaced with worry. The blonde boy's condition seemed to be worsening each passing second. Her white clothes were drenching themselves in his blood, but she could care less about such trivial things right now. Cradling him up and placing him delicately over her back, she started jumping back to the Leaf, intent on getting him there herself now. But feeling her back now dripping in his elixir of life, her heart skipped a beat. "Hold on now, you idiot, I'll get you help. Don't you die on me," she whispered worriedly, feeling his breath turning fainter by the minute. Her feet started picking up their pace as branches started blurring beneath them in a daze. It seemed like hours before the foliage finally ended, and she was rushing through the surprisingly unmanned gates of the village, straight to the hospital with a face of sheer urgency. Rushing in through the hospital doors, she slid to an abrupt stop. "I need help here," she spoke out loud, earning surprised looks from the staff going about their businesses there. Seeing the patient slung on her back, nurses started rushing close to her in a jiffy. "Please hurry up, he is in critical condition. This is an emergency," she pressed desperately, earning understanding nods from the nurse. "I understand that, miss," the nurse said reassuringly, now finally getting a good look at the bruised and beaten face of said patient. But catching a glimpse of those sun-kissed hair and whisker marks on his cheeks, even her eyes turned frosty. "I'll go and see if any doctor is free. Please wait right here," she said. Her voice was all too calm now, a bit too calm for TemarI's tastes in fact. TemarI growled, helplessly watching her walk away without a care in the world. What the hell's the matter with these people? She growled, boring holes in the retreating nurse's back. Was she the only one who was seeing how serious Naruto truly was? Tsunade, in a coincidental turn of events, walked out from the operation theater housing an injured Chaoji, and just as her eyes landed on the blonde, the unconscious one, she dropped her clipboard with a gasp before rushing closer to him. What happened to him? Come. Pulling her hands back with sheer will from trying to embrace the boy she adored so much, she had to crush her motherly instincts, and started rushing back to an empty room in a hurry. "Never mind that, bring him in the room over here." TemarI didn't need to be told twice, she followed Tsunade just as swiftly. "Shizu, get over here, right now," shouted Tsunade. Shizu came stumbling in, and seeing her brother in all but blood on the bed as if he was something the cat dragged in, her eyes widened in horror. "Naruto," she gasped. Tsunade slapped her cheek gently, snapping her apprentice out from the shock. "Assist me, don't fool around like this. We need to stabilize him, now." "Hi," Shizu agreed, pulling up her latex gloves, intent on stabilizing him as soon as she possibly could. TemarI stood there oddly, having no idea what to do now. She saw Shizu and Tsunade shouting orders in the air, moments before the room was frolicking with nurses, one of whom dragged her out and seated her in the waiting lounge, quite forcefully for her tastes. She sat there, waiting, covered head to toe in blood, with no idea what she was supposed to do or even where she currently was. Too engrossed was she in worrying for the boy who had essentially saved her little brother in more ways than one, but now, here he was, almost on the verge of death. And all for what? That cried Felicia. Her teeth clicked together in annoyance. Ever since she had laid eyes on him, that frightful bastard had left a bitter taste in her mouth. But to outright abandon your village, the highest form of treason one could commit just to get some petty revenge. He had to have been ludicrous, or suicidal even. She just couldn't place her finger on which one it truly was. TemarI. She had to wince and resist the urge to cover her ears. Talk about being loud. What happened to you? And why aren't you being treated for that matter this time? She did cover her ears. The screech of the fatal banshee had finally succeeded in making her do so. Please, Sakura, for Kami's sake, this is a hospital. Can you be any louder? She asked in barbed annoyance. Sakura nodded sheepishly, clearly embarrassed at being told off on her antics so bluntly. God, this isn't my blood for your information. It's Naruto's. He was critically injured when I brought him in, and as far as I know, he's still being treated like Tsunade-sama herself. Sakura snorted, urging TemarI to look up at her with an elevated eyebrow. Serves him right. TemarI narrowed her eyes at that, her tongue curling into distaste. After I told him to bring back Sasuke to me, he injured him, almost killed him. You should have left him there for all I care. How dare you even say that, you filth? TemarI hissed. He had a gaping hole where his heart was supposed to be, and even after all that he was still trying to bring back that bastard of an Ichigo back to the village. You are his teammate, for fuck's sake, have some respect. She snarled lowly, like a lioness biting back her roaring mind of her surroundings. You don't know anything. Sakura snorted, huffing in disgust. My mom was right. After what he did to Sasuke, I know he is the demon the rumors claim him to be. He could just go somewhere and die for all I care. She was cut off before she could spout off any more venom. Leave. TemarI whispered, her voice frigid as an iceberg. Die before I make you, and in the process put you in the same ward as your precious Ichigo while I'm at it allied villages be damned. She whispered, her tone never the tempestuous one. Sakura shivered from the tone, knowing full well she was more than capable of carrying out said threat if need be. Plus, her own abilities were anything but confidence-inspiring. Fine. Stay here for the demon to wake up then, I couldn't care less. She hopped again and walked away, leaving an irate Tsunade behind. Taking deep breaths to calm herself down before she threw a tantrum, TemarI sighed. TemarI, what's wrong? Turning around with a start, TemarI was met with a familiar pair of teal eyes. Her eyes softened seeing them. What are you so riled up, sister? A monotonous voice asked. Everything's fine, Gar. Nothing for you to worry about, she assured him half-heartedly. Gar nodded, knowing full well she was lying, but also knew that she must have had to have her own reasons for doing so, and left it at that. TemarI was glad he didn't probe any further, even if the thought of ridding the face of the earth from the plague of one bubblegum-haired banshee was much too tempting. She decided that in the end, it just wasn't worth it. Then why are you covered in blood? He asked, as monotonous and stoic as ever. She looked down to herself, only now realizing how she was appearing to others around her. It's not my blood. Her answer made Gar curious. Did his sister kill someone too? Improbable, not impossible, he thought. The idea was tempting though, it's Naruto's. He went stiff as a board hearing that. His eyes widened in disbelief. Is he alright? He asked. Even as cold as he was, even TemarI could see the urgency in his eyes. Small wonder for her brother to act that way after what Naruto had done for him, she mused. She nodded in affirmative. Tsunade-sama is treating him at present. I heard from her his healing is inhumanely fast, and add to the skills, she'll have him out of harm's way in no time. She assured him soothingly, and it worked. He nodded, trusting her enough on this. We must head back to the village then, he said. Her heart skipped a beat for some odd reason. She didn't want to leave, not yet. The village council has called back all shinobi we have at our disposal at once. They must take a decision on what the next course of action for our village will be. She wanted to argue, not knowing why, but in the end said nothing. She knew full well as to why they, or more specifically he, was being called back. The village was weak and distraught at the moment, so they must have their ultimate weapon at their disposal to show their strength in front of any and all who may think of taking advantage as soon as we can state right now. Even if she loathed it with all her heart, it was what it was. Nodding vehemently, she got up and walked out to head to the changing room. She needed to change her clothes with a spare she kept for such times after all, and even if a tiny part of her heart made her glance back again and again back to the operating room behind her, she trudged her way out without another word. Duties came first after all.
So that's it for this episode. If you want to watch the next episode, please comment down below. So for now, bye.